on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC reality check, with only the second episode of WWE last week. I really do want to encourage you guys to go check out the first episode last week, which was the follow-on from the Triple H era sort of mini-series that I did. For you guys that are listening to this for the first time, basically the series is what it says on the tin. It is, we are going to talk every Monday morning about everything that happened the previous week in WWE, mostly Raw and SmackDown, a little bit of NXT, we're going to talk about that later on, and fallout from any previous pay-per-views or premium live events that have happened in the previous 7 days. Now, the plan right now is this is going to drop every Monday at 10 o'clock my time, which is basically Toronto time. Figure that out for your own time zone. And I'd love to know what you guys think of this, because it's right around the right time to start diving back into WWE a little more, and possibly something else that we're going to talk about later. And on the other side of the coin, there's a whole lot of reasons to not talk about the other guys, because they're a bit shit. Oh yes. So yeah, we're going to talk about Raw, we're going to talk about the high points of NXT, we're going to talk about SmackDown, and a couple of other thoughts I've got, and that's basically going to be it. This is going to be a lot shorter than last week, because last week had to talk about Worlds Collide, had to talk about Clash at the Castle, had to talk about Raw, the full episode of NXT and SmackDown. Hopefully this is going to be a lot shorter, but those are the famous last words of a podcaster, are they not? Now, this was the week that I really sort of went. If you guys remember back in the day when I was recording old good NXT, I would come on here every now and then, and there would be just the right combination of things where it's like, that show was put together just for me. If you guys know, I'm pretty obvious, I'm pretty honest about where my biases lie, who I'm biased towards, who I'm biased against, etc. We still don't have to worry about Sasha Banks and Naomi trashing up our screens. So that, in amongst all the rest of it, is a great thing to start off with. But this week, from Raw to NXT to SmackDown, it was made for me and everything that I like, which is going to make me really biased, but I told you guys this was going to be a relatively positive series when I started it. We kicked off Raw with Rollins responding to Riddle from last week and basically saying he's not going to give Riddle a rematch, and it's everything that they said in their behind-the-scenes sort of WWE exclusive interviews where Riddle knows the mistake that he made. He knows he let himself get out of hand, and Rollins, who came out on the top end of things, is going to say, yeah, the last thing I'm going to do is give you a rematch. Riddle comes out sort of semi-serious, but he's still got the stoner shirt on and the flip-flops and all that. He tries to jump Rollins, and Rollins gets the escape because he's a squiggly little snake, is he not? So you got Riddle prone in the ring, sort of like pissed off at himself for not quite getting the job done once again, and he is accosted by Judgment Day. Judgment Day now with Priest and Balor and Rhea Ripley and emo Dominic Mysterio, which is a whole story in and of itself. But they sort of, for anybody that's been following NXT, they kind of do what Joe Gacy and the Dyad have been doing on NXT. Is like, okay, we want to recruit, we want to make our group bigger. We look over on SmackDown and see what being a bigger group has done for the Bloodline and things like that. We want to get more people. Riddle would be really good in our sort of ranks, and they try to take advantage of the fact that he's at his lowest point and all this kind of thing. And he responds to I forget who he hits now, to be perfectly honest with you, because my notes are short and shitty and jot note form. But basically, Riddle responds with a better V-trigger than Kenny Omega, which is always good. That leads us to the first match of the night, which is Balor versus Riddle. They're working on Riddle's neck, which is always a good thing. Priest is on the outside, like, doing that, like, distraction, but I'm not quite cheating thing. Rey Mysterio appears out of nowhere in the crowd to take out Priest. Rollins returns, and Balor gets the win due to the Rollins distraction, and then Rollins hits Riddle with a stomp to end the segment. And this whole thing that started with Rollins, went to Riddle, went to the Judgment Day, went to Rey Mysterio's interference, went to Riddle losing, and Rollins ending at the stomp at the end. This whole beginning strip, if you want to call it that, of Monday Night Raw was great, but Rollins is playing this great I guess, mind game with Riddle right now, where he says he wants nothing to do with him, and then every time he gets one up on him, like with the stomp, with the jumping, with the attack, etc., he comes off the opposite way with, you know, this is not over, this is never going to be over, Seth Rollins laugh, etc. Now, that's awesome, because that means Riddle can't get his revenge and he can't move forward either. It traps him, which makes him susceptible to people like Judgment Day. Judgment Day are a lot of fun. I know people don't like them, but they are a lot of fun. Long story short here, Damage Control pick up the tag team titles, which is good, which is fine. Bayley's on the outside, so there is a little bit of shenanigans and all that. Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez being the champions never really felt good. I'm fully convinced that the babyface team, the Asuka and Alexa Bliss and Bianca Belair thing, costing them the tag team titles was just a little bit of extra fuel on the fire for their trios match over in Wales. And now that that's served its purpose, they put the belts on the people that they belong on, not the people that have fucked off from the company for the past couple of months. And they didn't show up, which is the key point of all of this. So you have Bayley, who was instrumental. Sorry, pardon my misspeaking there. She was instrumental in the creation of these belts, and now she's got a team that she has brought with her to carry those titles while she goes on to other things, which is really, really good. I wish I could go more into this, but it's just, it feels like there was a step to the left when they got to the end of that tournament, and now they've corrected it. So it's just, on the one hand, I want to set off fireworks. On the other hand, it's just, no, this is what we should have done 2 weeks ago. And that's okay. That's good enough for me to say it's good, if that makes any sense at all. What's great, and what is probably, I would say maybe the highlight of Raw, is the in-ring return of Johnny Gargano, because you could go two ways with this. You could have him go up against a jobber. You could have him go up against a random person and lose because of theory interference. Or you could have him, and this would be the very wrong thing to do, you could have him come back and face somebody like Strowman and get squashed and use him to push Strowman, or somebody like that, or an Omos, or whatever the case may be. But you put him in there with Gable, who is incredibly underrated in his own right. Now, I love the Alpha Academy stuff, don't get me wrong. Gable and Otis as a tag team, both in the ring and as characters, are awesome. But whenever we get to see Gable on his own, and he really does just rip it up. So it serves this two-purpose thing of, A, it was a great match for Gable. Or sorry, it was a great match for Gargano, comeback match, everybody's happy for him. As long as he didn't fall flat on his face, people were going to love it. But it served the dual purpose of also, reminding us how great Chad Gable is underneath the comedic character. And they did make a point of making this sort of like a five-tool match, for lack of a better term. Like, they went through the initial, like, almost amateur grappling type thing. They went from there to the brawling, to the striking, finally to the more high-flying, I guess you would say new age type of wrestling. But I do get to say all these things that I haven't gotten to say in a long time since NXT was good. Slingshot Spear, Gargano escape, one final beat, Gargano gets the win. And for those of you that are upset when I say the name of his finishing move, which was also the name of one of the best matches ever in one final beat, yes, better than anything Omega or Page have ever done, fuck yourselves, it's all good. The Slingshot Spear is awesome, the Gargano escape is the Gargano escape, and the one final beat is just, it's a move that makes me smile. And that's the thing. They always say that the idea of a perfect finisher is a finisher that you can do on anybody. And somebody like a Gargano, 9 times out of 10 being the smaller guy in the match, he has to come up with moves that he can do on everybody. Now, what I do find kind of funny is how close in height he is with Chad Gable, and the fact that not too long ago, in our very, very recent past, we were calling Gable Shorty G. So what are the idiots and the assholes out there, the WWE NXT naysayers out there, gonna call Johnny Gargano? I can't wait. Twitter is a wasteland, is it not? I mean, there's AEW fans there. Now, Gargano celebrates the win. Otis comes to basically get his partner. And Gargano, predictably enough, gets attacked by Theory on the rampway with the Money in the Bank briefcase. He celebrates in the ring afterwards, after they've taken Gargano to the back and helped him, because after an entire match of beating the crap out of somebody, one shot to the back takes somebody out, because that's the logic of wrestling. He comes out, he cuts a celebration promo, talks about how he's all talk about how he's going to be the next big star, he's going to be the face of WWE, he's going to beat Roman Reigns at some point and be the new champion, and once again, he's cut off by Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens is exactly on form. He came out and healed it up and went back to his NXT character when he apron powerbombed Ezekiel out of our lives. Then he sort of like defined himself as heel, going face to face with Drew McIntyre, giving him the, you know, I was never the chosen one, you know, this is a wrestling ring with wrestlers, let's wrestle, that kind of thing. And now he's going back to like asshole babyface, like not just like shitting on Theory, but like, no, you are everything. Like there's 100 of you and 1 of me in wrestling. There's 100 of you and 1 of Johnny Gargano in wrestling. You could be, like, this is the frustrating thing, you could be the next face of the company, but why don't you fucking show me something? And he, you know, after this great powerful speech that he gives him that I can't do any justice to whatsoever, Theory just thinks about it for a second, and he does do this pretty well. Like, he's playing the arrogant sort of Miz-ish character, but he does pull off the split second of Kevin Owens' words actually getting through to him before he just sort of smiles, drops the microphone, strikes a very cliche pose. Kevin Owens finally, just like the rest of us, he's like, well, talking to you ain't doing anything, maybe this will help. And he just slaps him, and they brawl, and there's a pull apart. Theory is bloody in the face by the time that it's over with. Commentary jumps to the very early conclusion that he's broken his nose. Kevin Owens off microphone saying, yeah, you think that's it? That broken nose is just the beginning. And then we find out later on in the night that they are actually going to fight next week. I thought they were going to put a stip on it, or I thought they were going to save it for Extreme Rules, but chances are they're going to have a match next week. I mean, when you guys are listening to this, it'll literally be tonight. Chances are they're going to have their match tonight, and something will happen, something will go wrong, he'll hit him with the briefcase, or he'll run away or whatever, and then it'll be added to Extreme Rules with some sort of stipulation attached, and all this is cool. Again, like I said, with Rollins beginning and ending sort of the first strip of the show, we had this. We had Gargano versus Gable. Gable could have had a million run-ins from Otis, and Otis could have just slammed him in like 5 seconds, and his first match back would have been a disqualification, and that would have sucked. But we didn't get that. We got Gargano versus Gable, which was a fucking fantastic match for both guys. You let the crowd enjoy that whole match. You gave that match an ending, which is something WWE used to get pelters for all the time. And then you do the attack with Theory. And not only do you do that, you have Theory attack him and then go to the ring to talk about something completely different. So that way you've reinforced this idea that Theory, yeah, he wants to get a cheap shot in on Gable, but Gable's not even his top, or on Gargano, sorry. He wants to get his shot in on Gargano, who used to be his mentor and all that, and oh, what a shitty person, but that's not even his main goal. His main goal is to put himself over. His main goal is to get himself in a title picture. And then, now that he's taken out his mentor, now that he's got his goal set somewhere else, here comes this Canadian asshole, Kevin Owens, who's gonna pull every single one of his punk cards and tell him exactly why he sucks. And then that ended the segment, because I think, before Theory got away, I think Owens did get him with another stunner to end the thing. So starting off Gargano versus Gable and ending with Owens stunning Theory. Again, it's one long continuous strip through the show. Really, really good. Next thing we had Bianca Belair Open Challenge, and I thought that they had said that we were going to do Bianca Belair versus Bayley this week on Raw, and much like the Owens and Theory thing, I thought it was going to be a case of you know, they were going to have a match, there was going to be some shenanigans afoot from Damage Control, and then they would have set up the match for Extreme Rules. But instead, Bianca Belair came out with a completely open challenge, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, there's 2 comebacks that are in the rumor mill right now. One of them is Tegan Nox, which I thought they were going to do in Wales, and they didn't, so that's kind of a bummer. But I would have loved to see her come back, especially when we consider what happened on SmackDown, which we're going to talk about in a second. And the other one is Tenille Dashwood, the former Emma, who's also rumored to be coming back to WWE, which I think will also be really good, especially considering she's already lost her tag team partner, as Madison Rayne is now in AEW. So I'm thinking, okay, this is where we're going to introduce somebody new, or somebody's going to return, or somebody's going to come up from NXT, possibly like a Mandy Rose type thing, champion versus champion. Exhibition-wise, that could have been a cool thing. And then Sonya Deville answered, and my first reaction was like, oh, they're going to bury Sonya Deville, which ultimately they kind of did, but ultimately at the same time, they're sort of just beginning, and I don't want to give them too much credit, they are beginning to give Sonya Deville a slice, a shred, a sliver of the credit that she actually deserves. The the couple of minutes that she had with Ronda Rousey while they were taking out everybody else in that 5-way last week on SmackDown was the beginning of that. And the fact that they're talking more and more about her MMA background, not just saving those conversations for Ronda and Lesnar and Baszler specifically, is a good thing, and she's getting to show what she can do. And I'm always going to say this. People are going to get sick of me saying this. If you get sick of me saying this, that's absolutely fine. The reason she had to leave WWE and the slow crawl that she took to, first of all, come back to WWE and then separately be ready to be an in-ring competitor again and then now get the proper push that her talent deserves is fucking immense. It really, really is. And I'm not trying to sit here and be a softie or be some kind of, like, woke asshole or whatever. I'm not saying, like, all of a sudden because she had some stuff happen outside the company that she should just have something handed to her because we feel bad for her. No, it's the fact that she deserves it. She should have had it before. You guys heard me say a long while ago, when they came in as a tag team, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, I talked a lot about when they came here to Toronto for an NXT house show a long time ago. I saw them go 20 minutes against each other, and it was fucking fantastic. And I never saw a sliver of that on NXT, to be fair, or on the WWE main roster, and now she's finally getting that. Now Mandy Rose is kind of getting a different version of that in NXT as well, which is also awesome. But so she's just, I'm not asking to give Sonya Deville a handout. I'm saying give her what her talent deserves, and almost what she's been through to get there is the icing on the cake, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Bayley comes back out with her buddies that are now the new tag team champions. There's a lot of bantering back and forth, a lot of Bel Air, 3-snap, obnoxious promo stuff, and the challenge is laid down for Extreme Rules. Now, the next bit, apparently nobody saw. Apparently nobody saw it in the States, and apparently nobody saw it up here in Canada. I definitely didn't see it, because all of our service went out. But all it was Omos, who we remembered exists on this show, beating up some jobbers, which is cool. We haven't seen a whole lot of Omos. There hasn't been a whole lot of focus on Omos. But you got to consider who just came back last week, and that's Braun Strowman. And people are upset that right now all he's doing is beating up tag teams. Well, who's as big as a tag team? That is Omos. And I have to believe, I'm not saying it'll be the most exciting thing on the card. I'm not saying it's even the thing I'm going to be looking forward to on the card. But I do think you throw Omos and Braun Strowman on the Extreme Rules card in some ridiculous match where they can just do a bunch of stunts. Could be a lot of fun. It could be a thing to fill the card. It could be, hey, we've got 2 main events, but we want to let up the crowd in the middle. Let the monsters go out there and do some monster stuff. That could be a lot of fun. In the back, one of the interview ladies, I can't remember her name, I can't remember which one it was, if I'm completely honest with you, was asking Rollins about what he did, why he did what he did to Riddle, why is he tormenting him, what was the point of what you did at the beginning of the show tonight. He says, you know, I want to remind the world who the face of Raw is. And then just conveniently off to the left is the only singles champion that we really see on Raw, seeing as Roman Reigns is a SmackDown guy, and that's Bobby Lashley. Rollins had said earlier on in the night he was moving on from Riddle, obviously, to bigger and better things, and it's been a long time since I've seen gold around my waist. And Lashley steps to him and says, you know, I'm the champion on this roster. And Rollins even says, and I think this is kind of cool, because you have to balance how you handle this. He says, that wasn't really the gold I was talking about, but if you're challenging me, I'll be happy to take it off of you next week. I don't know how they get around this, and this goes for any company. This goes for, like, in Impact, you've got, like, the world title, and then you got the X Division title. In WWE, you've got the world title, and then you've got the US and IC titles. In AEW, they've got way too many titles, but, like, let's just say you've got the world title and the TNT championship, right? I don't know how you have a secondary champion make the challenge to somebody, because they can't really say, I don't want that title, I want that one, because then you're burying the title. But then if you go along and say, well, I'll fight you instead because any title will do, then the world title looks like shit. So that is one of those paradoxes in wrestling that they have to kind of maneuver around. I think they did an okay job, and Seth Rollins can always play it off as like, oh yeah, sure, I'll grab that one before I grab the big one, because let's not forget, not too long ago, he beat John Cena as the US champion to become also the world champion, and became like Seth 2 belts and all that sort of thing. So there is a precedent for Seth Rollins to specifically hold those 2 belts simultaneously. I like that. That's a good thing. We did a segment at The Miz's house where he's supposed to be interviewed. The interview doesn't really happen, but the interview is happening for us to have an excuse for there to be cameras in his house, and his kids playing on the piano, and his wife's getting ready to go to some sort of, like, they're going to the debut, they're going to the movie premiere. They never mention what movie because it's fake. Don't worry about it. But it makes you think, you know, in world, if you're on your way out to a premiere, you wouldn't schedule your interview that day, but it's good for what it is. He wants to stay home. He doesn't want to go to the premiere because he doesn't know what'll happen, and da-da-da-da. And Maurice is there. Maurice is playing like the fretting heel wife, which is fucking awesome. She's underrated as well. And she finally convinces him that, like, hey, you know, you're the A superstar, you're the A-lister or whatever, we have to go do this premiere, people are expecting us, and, you know, everything will be fine. And then they pull away, and Dexter Lumis is drawing a picture of Miz and Maurice in like the Miz and Mrs. jackets that they wear to the ring, as we pan to black. And the only thing I have wrong with this, and the only thing that people are, sorry, I don't care, because this is a silly story. It's allowed to be silly. The people out there that have said, oh, it's kind of creepy to be like, oh, they just left for the night and this guy's broken into their house and they've got kids upstairs, I will give you that. I will 100% give you that, because that's really troubling if you think about it with a super serious lens. But if you're looking at Dexter Lumis stalks The Miz with a super serious lens, you may not be watching wrestling correctly. Now, we got to the main event, which was Edge versus Dominic Mysterio. And you knew what this was going to be. This was going to be Edge trying to help Dominic Mysterio to a good match. And throughout the night, I should have said, they did these things where Edge, or Ray was trying to say, like, look, don't go after Edge. You don't want to see that other side of him. Roddy Raw, I've known this for a long time. You know, you're my son. You know, he's like your uncle, etc. They've really locked into this, oh, Edge is the uncle thing in the past couple of weeks, which, yeah. I mean, you can go back to, like, they were tag team champions, like, what, 10 or more years ago? But it's a really loose thread that they've picked up and decided to make, like, the biggest part of this story. But Edge just beats the shit out of Ray, and it's fine. They play it off on commentary because it's an awkward... If this was actually happening, doing commentary for this match would be awkward as hell. Because you know Ray, you know Edge, you know Dominic. You see them in the back after you leave commentary and everybody's getting ready to leave in the back. So you know all these people. You're trying to narrate this thing that's happening within their family and whatnot. But this, you know, Edge is like the uncle. Maybe he's trying to be like a second parent. He's giving him an ass kicking because that's exactly what he needs and all that kind of thing. And then eventually Edge gets Dom in the ropes in like sort of like that crucifix pose where, you know, you're just beating down on somebody that absolutely cannot defend themselves because their hands are tied back. And Edge gets in the way. Ray blocks the Edge beats him down. Ray comes down to the ring. Ray keeps Edge from spearing Dominic Mysterio. And I'm sorry, I don't know how this would have happened without somebody actually getting hurt, because Ray being tied up in the ropes and Edge hitting him full force with a spear would have taken them. It would have taken them both to the outside. It would have been Big E's, like, Big E does that sort of like that juggernaut spear that takes both out to the outside, but I don't know how that would have worked with him being tied up in the ropes. So it's a move, they were setting up a move you didn't know was going to happen, which, yes, I will admit, definitely takes you out of the match. Ray came down, he blocks the spear, the match kind of ends as everybody gets involved, and there's a 4-on-2 beatdown. There's a 4-on-2 beatdown after the match from Judgment Day on Rey Mysterio and Edge. I do want to say, and it's getting weirder and weirder, right? But the entire Judgment Day was not out with Dominic Mysterio, and this is where we talk about like sections of factions, and we're going to talk about that a lot on SmackDown because I thought they did it a lot better on SmackDown. But Judgment Day is a formidable group. Now, in storyline, now the way they've been booked hasn't been great. They're slowly starting to fix that, I think. But it doesn't feel And you guys can tell me if you agree or not. I'm tripping on my words because I want to properly say what I'm saying to you guys here. But it doesn't feel like Dominic has joined the Judgment Day as much as the Judgment Day is Priest, Balor, and Ripley, and Dominic is like Ripley's project, if that makes sense. Like Ripley is like the sister that has the project, and Priest and Balor will help her with this project to help her. And that gives a different dynamic than if they're all four of them are all together. It's like, you know, it's like if you have a family reunion and one of your brother or your sister's friends decide to swing by. Like, yeah, it's good to see them. You can have a drink with them and whatever, but there's a definite, like, hey, that's my brother's friend type of thing. It very much feels, I'm getting repetitive now, sorry, but it definitely feels like there's Judgment Day, which includes Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley now has Dominic Mysterio as a project. And, yeah, all the other inappropriate jokes floating around on Twitter aside, that ain't a bad place to be. I remember a couple of weeks ago when she was fighting Dom and she had him in like the figure 4 headlock and put the picture out on Twitter with the caption, Dominic's out here living all of your best lives for you. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't say no. I'm just putting that one out there. So that was Raw. A lot of fun stuff. Like I say, if you really put my feet to the fire, what's the headline? What's the highlight of Raw? It would have been the Gable Gargano match for sure. All the way that the stories are sort of starting to intertwine with each other is also pretty good. I do want to say there's a little bit of me that wondered when they were doing the 4-on-2 beatdown at the end of the show, when it was Judgment Day taking out Edge and Rey, there was a little part of me that was like, you know, if you want to tie up the story from the beginning of the night, why didn't Riddle come back out? But then I guess you can justify that with, okay, well, they beat the shit out of him at the beginning of the night, and that was followed by a curb stomp by Rollins, so he's definitely still going to be focused on Rollins. I have another idea that's going to concern that. We're going to talk about that later. Now, going to switch gears a little bit to NXT. I wasn't expecting to do a full breakdown of NXT this week. I knew they were doing the 1-year anniversary thing, which is fine, the 2.0 stuff. You guys know that them switching to 2.0 is basically why I stopped doing NXT reviews. But they were doing the, pick your matches, pick the person of the year, pick the stipulation of this, pick the opponent for that. And I had a good idea in my head that we were going to get Carmelo Hayes versus Wes Lee. And I thought, if that's as good as I think it'll be, then at least that is something that I can come up here and talk about. Because obviously, Carmelo Hayes coming off of the awesome match at Worlds Collide with Ricochet, if it's a matter of the rest of the show is silly nonsense, and we can count on one good Carmelo Hayes match a week, at least I can talk about that. But we did get a couple of other points. So I will say they have kicked off the feud finally with Mandy Rose and Kaylee Ray, who's now going by Alba Fire. Mandy Rose and her girls, Jacy Jane and Gigi Dolin, who are no longer the women's tag team champions on NXT. They were out there just doing basically a braggadocious speech. Mandy Rose just beat Blair Davenport and Meiko Satomura to unify the NXT women's titles. So she's on cloud 9, and basically, you know how heels go out there and they say, well, I'm a champion and my girls are going to get their titles back in a second, don't even worry about it. Now, behind the scenes, apparently her girls have already been officially moved to the SmackDown roster, but don't worry about that. And they're talking about the 1-year anniversary. They're talking about how dominant Mandy Rose has been over the division in that time, and they talked about being the best group in NXT, or the best group to ever come out of NXT, or something to that effect. For a split second, and I'm really bummed that this didn't actually happen, but for a split second, I thought we were going to get Toxic Attraction versus Damage Control, because that would have been a lot of fun. Heel Mandy Rose against heel Bailey, and then Gigi Dolan and Jacy Jane taking on Dakota Kai and Io Sky. That would be it would be like what we did at Clash at the Castle. Like, we don't have to necessarily have titles on the line, but here's just a trios match, a collaboration or a concussion of forces, so to speak. We didn't get that. What we got instead was Kaylee Ray, who, like I say, is now going by Alba Fire, which is not the most original thing in the world, and she takes out the backup with the big red bright bat, and basically she's set her sights on Mandy Rose. So there's a couple different things here. I've liked Kaylee Ray. If you went back to my coverage of they should still be on the channel. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, this is way before I was doing this in podcast form. But if you go back on the channel, you'll find my weekly reviews of both Mae Young Classics. I've liked Kaylee Ray since the Mae Young Classic. I think she's a badass. I think she's different enough. I think there's I don't want to say a realism, because that gets battered around way too much, but there's a jagged edge to what she does, and it's really cool. It's really unfortunate that she's been over in NXT UK doing her thing over there, because nobody watches NXT UK, and now it's going to be NXT Europe, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. Her versus Mandy Rose is an awesome thing, because if they're calling up Toxic Attraction without Mandy Rose, that'll be a bit weird. So if she finally drops that now unified title to Kaylee Ray, that will be a really, really awesome thing. And then you can bring Toxic Attraction up as a faction. Yes, that rhymed. It wasn't intentional. Don't worry about it. And then at some point, put them on whatever brand Damage Control aren't on, and then you can have them face each other at Survivor Series, and then you don't have to build a reason. You don't have to worry about the fact that they're both heels. You can just say, hey, they're from Raw, they're from SmackDown, let's let them have a match. It'll be fine. Now, coming back to the original reason I was watching this episode, was I really thought that I was going to see Wesley win the vote, get his title shot against Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes was going to have a really good exhibition. I don't think Wesley was going to win, but we would have a good match for the night. He did win the vote, and then him and Trick went to find Wesley in the back and beat the shit out of him and closed his head in a locker. So that was a thing that happened. So the main event was Carmelo Hayes basically coming out with Trick and saying he's not coming out tonight, so we're going to call this a victory, call it a night. And then some familiar music plays, and out comes Solo Sikoa, brand new member of the SmackDown roster, Solo Sikoa. And he basically ties in a big knot all the promos that he's ever done on Carmelo Hayes when Carmelo Hayes has had other feuds. And he said, hey, I warned you, you didn't listen to me, I said I got next. They go through, they're the main event. I thought, okay, this is Solo Sikoa's leaving NXT, leaving the territory, so to speak. He's going to go out on his back, putting over a current champion. But no, he wins, despite the interference from Trick Williams and a couple of spots where we thought it was going to be something else. He wins. He wins the North American Championship, puts the ones up because now he's in the bloodline. And my mind kind of goes, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing now? Are we bringing an NXT title to SmackDown? Are we bringing an NXT feud to SmackDown? What are we doing? Have we freed up Carmelo Hayes because he's going to go on Raw? I don't know. I don't know how any of this goes, right? But don't really have much time to think about that, because we cut to the very end. This is the 1-year anniversary show. There's a voiceover from Shawn Michaels talking about, we've always looked to the past, we've always looked to the future, one thing always remains the same, we are NXT. And then it ends off in like half a second. You want to get all of my attention. The rainbow butterfly fart colored logo of NXT, and then the way they did it graphically was like a little gold line sort of goes around the logo. The color disappears, and it sort of pops off this new sort of black, yellow, and white logo comes up. And that's all I needed. That is really, really all I needed. It was, we are going back to go forward. We are going back to where we are taking this brand where it is now. We're taking it back a bit to get back of some of the shit that we've lost to go forward. Now, everybody popped. Now, that was a 2-hour show, and everybody pops for a graphic at the end. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The naysayers on there, mostly the AEW fans, that are like, oh, you're just popping for a logo, you're just popping because something changed color. It's like, no, because those colors, that association goes with something that we know, that we are content with, that we had a following for, type of thing. And then you get the news that the next 2 episodes of NXT are going to be pre-taped because they are rebuilding the NXT zone, and takeovers are coming back. So all the people that are naysaying the black and gold NXT that might be coming back, when TakeOver comes back and you guys want to get clicks and engagement on your podcasts or on your YouTube videos by putting TakeOver in the title, you will expose yourself for the absolute charlatans that you are. But also, it does mean, because they're pre-taped, because the results are all out there already, I will say, no, and I'm not going to give any results away, but the one thing we do find out in the next 2 weeks of pre-taped stuff is that Ilya Dragunov is back from injury. He's been cleared. He's back, part of the roster, part of the main NXT roster now, and that's fucking awesome. If you want to talk about things that were cool during the, the quarantine, COVID, the whole world got a cold for a bit era, go and watch the empty studio match between Ilya Dragunov and Gunther when he was still Walter, and the dude gets turned into hamburger. He just does. It's really gross. I've only watched it once, but the guy's fun and the guy's really erratic, and he's going to be a cool introduction to this roster, as this roster and this show, let's say in 3 weeks, has to decide what it is now. So am I excited over a gold logo? Yes, I fucking am. That's all I got. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Now, we've done a cool thing with the NXT Championship. We did something that was unexpected. I mean, Solo Sikoa was a guy I've been saying for a while. Let's just go back and let me be consistent with what I've been saying. The two guys that I've said were main roster ready are the now ex-North American champion Carmelo Hayes, that they can literally do anything with now. The dude is main roster ready. And Solo Sikoa, who is literally on the main roster now, carrying that NXT title. So let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we're shading outside the lines and all that kind of thing. Also, JD McDonough is really, really creepy and fun. So hopefully at some point we get JD McDonough, who's a little bit weird and a little bit off the wall, and Ilya Dragunov, who's a little bit shady and a little bit off the wall, and that could be a lot of fun. Switching gears now to SmackDown. I don't know if any of you have heard the interview that Roman Reigns did with Logan Paul. It's really good. Talks about when he was sick. Talks about before he was in the WWE, some of his football stuff. Talks about, finding himself. Talks about the Suffer and Succotash promo. Talks about a bunch of different things. It has a whole lot of respectful things to say about, like, obviously Paul Heyman, Brock Lesnar, etc., etc., etc. It has a lot of good, positive feedback for Logan Paul himself as well. But then afterwards, the whole idea is that, things are not all as bright as shiny as we think they should be. Logan Paul comes out on SmackDown to call out Roman Reigns, not for a match, but he wants to call him out for a press conference. And I haven't watched the press conference, I'm not going to lie. But basically, obviously SmackDown's on Friday. He says, well, tomorrow there's going to be a press conference. And later on, it's confirmed that it's going to be a press conference for the next Crown Jewel event. Cue all the people clutching their pearls. Oh my God, Crown Jewel. Oh my God, big bad WWE is, adhering to stuff that they've already adhered to and you knew was going to happen for the next 10 years. So you're acting surprised for clout on Twitter, and it's weird. He doesn't get Roman Reigns out there, though. He gets the entire bloodline, including Paul Heyman. So you've got Heyman, Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, Solo Sikoa, and Sami Zayn, which is awesome because it used to be a trio. It was Roman and the Usos, and now it's grown to sort of quite a faction, quite an army almost. And the more they go on with the story, and I'm talking specifically the story with Sami, the less he looks out of place in the group, which I think is really cool. Heyman leads the entire bloodline out. He tries to talk about, this, that, and the next thing, and Logan Paul's sitting there. He plays off the what chants really well, which is really good. He says, I see everybody here. I see a whole lot of badass Samoans here, but I don't see Roman. Is Roman scared of me? Like, chances are, if we ever did get in the ring together, I could get that one lucky punch in, all this type of thing. Solo gets called up by Heyman, but then Sami Zayn hops in the middle, says, I'll hand it, let me bring a little bit of diplomacy to the mix and all that kind of thing. Logan Paul proceeds to deck him. He takes the most comedic, flat back bump off of one shot from Logan Paul. And then we hear Ricochet's music. because the match that is set to open up the show is Ricochet versus Sami Zayn. So now we have Ricochet versus Sami Zayn with Logan Paul on the outside and the entire bloodline on the outside. What's awesome as well, and I know a million people caught this on Twitter and the pictures and little like cell phone videos and whatever, when Sami Zayn takes the shot to the jaw, Paul Heyman's pissed, Solo Sikoa's pissed, Jimmy Uso is pissed, Jey Uso is sitting there smirking his ass off, and I think that is so awesome. It's kind of a bummer they didn't capture that better on screen, but it is what it is. Ricochet versus Sami Zayn, interference aside, is never going to be a bad match at all. There's a couple of miscommunications between Sami and Jey throughout the match, and Jimmy tries to play peacekeeper. Ricochet gets the win because Logan Paul's about to run in, and Jey goes to cut him off, but the referee catches Jey, and there's a distraction which leads to the loss. So inadvertently, it looks, from the Bloodline's point of view, that Jey just cost Sami a match. You know, you cost us a match for the team, and obviously Ricochet gets a win, so he gets to stay looking good. Logan Paul gets to be in his corner, sort of egging him on like a hype man, which is good. And when they come to beat them down like 4-on-2, much like what was happening on Raw with the Judgment Day, you had somebody come in to sort of even the odds, and that was Madcap Moss with a chair. I was kind of wondering why Madcap Moss was the one to jump in, but then quickly it's explained on commentary that Solo Sikoa is going to be defending the NXT North American Championship for the first time ever on SmackDown against Madcap Moss. I'm like, alright. So not only is he an NXT champion, that's going to be an important part of SmackDown. The title is going to be featured on SmackDown. And yes, the entire Bloodline walking down, even without Roman, they have 5 belts between them. That's visually awesome. It's absolutely visually awesome. We get a backstage pre-taped black and white promo from Karrion Kross, and it's the kind of promo that pisses off all the right people. He's now named himself the People's Executioner, and the time for Drew McIntyre is coming, and it's all fine. This is, again, the silliness. If you can accept that one company has a dinosaur and an alien and a zombie and a guy that's named after fruit and a guy that curses people, you can accept that this one guy over here, who's just a dude, likes to do his promos in black and white. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Max and Maxine Dupree are out to introduce the Maximum male models doing the back-to-school collection, even though kids have been back to school for a month already. It's how dorky they are as a group that they are a month behind, which is fine. Max Dupree makes a reference to us being really, really close to LA, and then he waits for the reaction because the rumor is that he's going to go back to the LA Knight character. Last week in a WWE.com exclusive, he sort of said, hey, we lost tonight, but we got to go through the day to get to the night. So he's teasing the LA Knight thing, which is good. If we get proper NXT LA Knight, yeah, in WWE, that'll be good. You can leave Maxine Dupree as Massey and Mansoor's managers, and that's all fine and wonderful. Mansoor comes out as part of his back-to-school outfit. He's got a skateboard, so I'm just going to say somebody tell Tony Khan that WWE secretly hired Darby Allin. That was fine. I made myself smile. Don't even worry about it. Strowman tackles them both down the rampway like they're not even there and poses in the ring, and everybody cheers because they're happy that Strowman's back. It's all good. He then gets, I guess you want to say, quote-unquote, jumped by the Alpha Academy, kills them for the most part, but Otis does get a slam on Braun Strowman, which is interesting, because just for a second he was down. They left the ring celebrating, but he was sat up before even anything could happen. He's like, get back here, big boy, you want a match? I think it's hysterical watching Braun Strowman call anybody else big boy. When Keith Lee came down in the Royal Rumble and Brock Lesnar said, oh, big boy, that was funny because Keith Lee is bigger than Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is a monster, but size-wise, Keith Lee is bigger. Nobody is bigger than Braun Strowman. I mean, Otis is a big, thick dude, but we've already done the whole, yeah, you're a big, thick dude, but I can powerbomb you last week. So watching, as I say, watching Strowman call him big boy was it made me laugh, I'm not going to lie. But it meant immediately, like, here's this brand new monster. And yes, he's even got the Monster of All Monsters t-shirt going for him. So the merch is there. But he's already shown that he can be taken down. And that's okay. Don't do it too much. But say that, like, hey, it took this other guy that's pretty sizable and his tag team partner to get it done. That's how you balance out that particular story. We'll talk more about that later on. Damage Control come out and brag about winning the tag team titles. They brag about injuring Aaliyah, which I don't know whether that's actually true or not. Raquel comes out. She wants revenge. She has a match with Bayley. Conveniently, Bayley's already in her ring gear. Look at that. I don't want to be a dickhead to Raquel Rodriguez, because clearly she's a project. Clearly she's not, like, clueless in the ring. But this was a very awkward match, and you could see several points where Bayley was sort of pulling her through, but that's where you get the value of somebody like Bayley. Bayley obviously gets the win because of interference and whatever. Again, 3-on-1 beatdown, and here's the next coolest thing that they've done tonight. The save for Raquel Rodriguez is not made by Aaliyah, because we've already established that she's injured. She's saved by brand new babyface fucking Shotzi Blackheart. Oh yes. Now, put that along with the rumors that they have gone back into the WWE tool shed and they are going to pull out her tank again. We are getting babyface Shotzi Blackheart, again, to make up for this never should have been a thing. She never should have been a heel. She's awesome. People want to cheer her. She doesn't give a fuck in the ring. I mean, WWE makes you give a little bit of a fuck because they don't want their... Unlike other companies, they don't want their wrestlers to die. But... Shotzi doesn't care. Put Shotzi in a ladder match. Put Shotzi in anything at Extreme Rules, and you'll be doing yourself a favor. I'm just putting that one out there. Have an exhibition. Seeing as you're focusing so much on Sonya Deville right now, for no reason at all, for no titles, for no nothing, have an exhibition match, some kind of hardcore stipulation exhibition match between Shotzi Blackheart and Sonya Deville. You'd make my fucking day. It would be great. Ronda sits down to do a backstage interview about her match at Extreme Rules with Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan cuts off the interview, excuses whoever was doing the interview. I'm shitty with names. I think it was Kayla Braxton, actually. And she sits down and says, you know what, yeah, I've beaten you twice, and you're going to sit here and say all the things that people have said to me all my life, and I'm just going to have to prove myself over and over and over again. And it sounds crazy. Like, if you're the narrator of this story, you almost don't want to say the next sentence. Liv Morgan challenges Ronda Rousey to an Extreme Rules match at Extreme Rules. She's gonna die. I think, if I was gonna make a prediction right now, this is where they're going to unveil the teaming of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. Not that Ronda Rousey needs it, but the fact that she doesn't need it makes it all the more mean, all the more cruel, and all the more sad for Liv Morgan, who has such a strong babyface following as she does. I think that's going to be really fun. If we're getting... I don't think we're getting a WWE World title match. I don't think Roman's doing Extreme Rules. But if we get a doubleheader of Bayley versus Bianca Belair and Ronda Rousey versus Liv Morgan... It's not the worst thing in the world, I'm not going to lie. I'm already predicting, I should have said this, I'm already predicting that there's going to be some, maybe Rollins picks up the title from Lashley this Monday, or should I say this evening, and then Lashley gets his rematch at Extreme Rules. That could be a thing. And I don't know whether they're going to want to do one more round of Gunther versus Sheamus, but I don't know who else you would throw in Gunther's path in the next few weeks either, so maybe we don't see the Intercontinental Championship, but it's all good. There's a lot of good possibilities. It is a B show, and they're going to have to pick somebody else. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you throw Theory and Owens on there again. I'm not sure. We cut back from the interview with Liv and Ronda, and we're back to, cameras on Corey Graves and Michael Cole, because Pat McAfee's off away doing football stuff, so Corey Graves is pulling double duty. 2 thumbs up for him. And they're interrupted by Drew McIntyre, who grabs a microphone and stands on the commentary table. Commentary table had a bad night, too, because Paul Heyman and Michael Cole had an argument early on in the night during the first match where Paul Heyman poured pop all over all of his notes. So the commentary table's already having a bad night, interrupted by Drew McIntyre, stands on the comm desk and basically calls out Karrion Kross. He says, I've been looking, you're leaving all these messages, these coded promos and all that kind of thing, but I don't see you unless you're jumping me from behind. I haven't seen you behind the backstage area all day, so do I have to stand up here right now and ask you to call me out? Or sorry, ask you to jump me once again, or do I have to stand out here and call you out? Gotta believe that that's another thing that could be your main event at Extreme Rules in lieu of a world title match, but no answer, and I'm okay with that. Cross is throwing a bit of bullshit, Drew's throwing a bit of bullshit, neither one of them's really giving an answer. Gives you a reason to tune in next week. We get Solo Sikoa versus Madcap Moss in a North American Championship match, and here's the thing. I like Madcap Moss. Madcap Moss is really good in this role right now. I thought he was going to be trapped as a character when, for a long time, he was Baron Corbin's partner, and then he was Baron Corbin's opponent, who's only Baron Corbin's opponent because he used to be Baron Corbin's partner. But he does sort of come out now as sort of like generic jacked wrestler number 5, which isn't an insult, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, which means he's great for matches like this, where they are still in the process of introducing Solo Sikoa, especially as North American Champion, because if he's generic wrestler number 5, he can go in there, be the other body in the ring, while Solo Sikoa is showing, this is what I can do, this is what I am going to do, and this is what it means to me to be your North American Champion. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the match, interference from Sami Zayn, etc., but the bigger story is they're getting ready to go out for this match. The Usos are trying to, get them all jacked up, get them ready, tell them, you're representing that title, you're representing our family, you're representing the bloodline, all the thing, let's go. And he stops Jay because of what happened earlier on in the night and says, hey man, you're off tonight, you've already cost us something tonight, I need you guys to stay back here, which is fine. So he's going to go, pun intended, he's going to go out there solo and prove himself. But no, he looks over their shoulders and said, Sammy, you coming or what? I love this story. This story in and of itself is fucking great. He goes out there. He obviously gets the win. This is why I say the Madcap character is great for this, because Madcap's going to go, like I said, be the other guy in the ring so that Solo can have an exhibition of what Solo Sikoa does for people that haven't been watching NXT. And I'm going to keep saying it. It's a great platform for that NXT championship. It's a great platform for people to say, if people like this are coming from NXT, maybe we should go watch NXT. Awesome. Main event was kind of underwhelming. We knew it was going to be from last week. We were going to get a rematch of the Fatal 4-Way Tag match to establish new #1 contenders for the Tag Team Championships, but they did switch out some of the competitors. They took out Los Lotharios. They took out, obviously, Alpha Academy to put them in the Braun Strowman segment earlier. So it was Hit Row, Imperium, the Brawling Brutes, and the New Day. And I mean, it was a pile of people match. I don't want to end this on a down note, but it was a pile of people match. A lot of fun stuff. I mean, what's his name? Rich Holland was going in there doing a lot of power stuff. Top Dollar had a moment where he had 2 people on his back and he was carrying a third, and he basically turned it into a 2-way slam, which I thought was awesome. People are shitting on Top Dollar, and they've been back like 3 weeks. I don't get it. The guy's fun. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Again, aliens and zombies and dinosaurs and whatever, but you can't give this guy a little bit of thing because you think his gimmick's a bit off, or was it because he made fun of the Bucks shoes? Was it because it made fun of the Bucks shoes? That's a really weird reason not to like somebody. Anyways, the match was what it was. Big pile of people. The Brawling Brutes get the win, which is kind of cool. I keep wanting to call him Pete Dunne, but if Butch and Ridge Holland are going up against the Usos, that does put Sheamus in the Roman Reigns sphere, which, if Roman Reigns does come back and decide that he is going to do a minor pay-per-view, that wouldn't be a terrible match. I mean, it would be a scrap more than anything else, but it would be okay. It would be okay. It would be a good filler. I mean, chances are that we are going to keep those titles on Roman until WrestleMania, where he either faces The Rock or loses them to Cody Rhodes. But in the meantime, it's sort of like the Undertaker streak. It's like, okay, we know he's going to win, but who do we want to see him face? Who do we want to see in the same sphere? And you've got your Rollinses, you've got your Kevin Owenses, you've got Austin Theory in the background with his briefcase there. So if this is a way to stick Sheamus onto that list, then cool. If you want to have like the marquee value of champion versus champion, you want to do Roman Reigns versus Gunther, go ahead and fucking do it. I would love to see it. But yeah, like, the match was good, don't get me wrong. It wasn't much to go home from, and it's not as much of a talking point as some of the other stuff on the show, which is kind of unfair to it, but I hope you guys get my meaning. Anyways, like I say, overall, great, lots of things to pick at, lots of things to feed your wrestling appetite as we look across the 3 shows. So next week on Raw, we've got Lashley versus Rollins for the US title. We've got Theory versus Owens in what I think right now is a normal match, which is probably going to lead to Extreme Rules. We've got Otis versus Strowman on SmackDown, and we've got the Usos versus the Brawling Brutes for the tag team titles. And again, Usos are going to win, but that's going to be a good match. Now, I've got 2 things that I want to put out to you, because we're not that far away from Survivor Series, so I want to suggest 2 Survivor Series matches to you. And this is going to be back to the traditional 4-on-4, not the 5-on-5s that we get now. But can you imagine Judgment Day? And when I say Judgment Day, I mean including Dominic Mysterio. So Dominic Mysterio, Damian Priest, Finn Balor, and add in Seth Rollins, take on Edge, Rey Mysterio, Riddle, and throw in AJ Styles just to finish off that team, because AJ Styles was around when the Judgment Day group first formed. He's probably still got a bone to pick with them. That could be fun. Also, you get the Bloodline and Austin Theory versus Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre, and Carmelo Hayes. Again, feature the title, feature another star from NXT who's on the rise like Carmelo Hayes. You would obviously have to complete the Sami Zayn has been turned on by the Bloodline to make that work, but it's just 2 combinations that I thought of as I was watching SmackDown, and I thought they'd be really fun. So what are the overall takeaways from this week? And this is where I'm going to try and sort of, all the rambling that I've done, I'm going to sort of sum up why I'm treating this as a positive series. They're keeping on pushing Owens. Like, they're pushing Owens the way they should have been done the past couple of years. They're playing catch-up now, which is awesome. The Gargano debut match with Gable was awesome, and we're getting into the thing between him and Theory. How much they dig into their past with NXT versus how much they do it just based on what's happening on right now will be something that we'll have to see which way they go with that. Oh, I should say as well, when they had the opening match between Ricochet and Sami Zayn, on SmackDown, they made reference to some rivalry they used to have in PWG. So that's another thing they never would have done in the Vince era. I know that's not a huge thing because I didn't watch PWG, but I think it's cool that they're opening things up like that. What else did we do? We fixed the women's tag team title situation. The entire experiment that we're doing right now with Solo Sikoa getting called up to the main roster, bringing an NXT championship with him and defending it on the main show, I think all that's awesome. NXT is going to go to black and gold, which is, we don't know exactly what that'll mean because it's not quite old black and gold, but it's some new version of black and gold. And I will say this right now, if they bring that show back up to the standard that it was when I was reviewing it before, I will start reviewing it again, and it'll be separate from the WWE Last Week series that we're doing here, right now. We've taken Judgment Day to a faction that is now in a recruiting process, which I think is really cool. Possible gold for Seth Rollins this week in his match against Bobby Lashley. And we took Shotzi Blackheart, who should have never been a heel, and made her a babyface, which, if nothing else, gets me right in the heart, gets me right in the feels. And yes, check it off your Spaz Phoenix bucket list. I saw her at Destiny before she was a WWE superstar. That's it. That's all for this week. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later. But for right now, tag it out. Bye, guys.